Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today we are working on our book study. We are hard and fast moving through. We're about halfway through the Boundaries book study with all my girlies. So give us a like, share this video, and jump into the conversation with us. There's a link to join the Telegram group where you can chat throughout the week and join the community there. But we are going to be doing these on Mondays on the show, and then have a monthly Zoom call where you can join in, but then also have the Telegram group available as well. So be right back with all the girls right after this. Welcome back, ladies. It's good to see you all. I missed you last week.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to get caught up. I know I worked on your family and your friends, and you guys stayed on schedule and did your spouse and your children, boundaries with your spouse and your children. So I thought it'd be great if we can kind of stay on schedule and move forward on those. There's a lot to cover, but I think it kind of all falls in place because it's all those, really personal relationships. A lot of it is repetitive. I found it was kind of going over, oh, there's that thing again with the whole compliant, aggressive, and the different styles and how they conflict and conflate. I didn't actually, it was interesting to me personally how they told you to handle some of it. I think it's interesting when you see like a therapist or go to a life coach or work with somebody or read a book, a self-help book or whatever, you are taking their point of view, or you're ingesting, being exposed to their point of view or their way of handling something. And some of it's some really great. It's a different perspective of how somebody else would handle something. They obviously have years of experience, all that. But some of it, I was like, I don't know that I agree with all of that. So I'm curious to see kind of where you guys were with it. Probably my favorite part was the family part, because I think that it keeps going back to, a lot of this stuff. It seems like the relationships, it all goes back to that family, how you were raised, what was expected, or a lot of it's just assumed. I had a pastor give me a book one time that said, Everyone's Normal Till You Get to Know Them was the title of it. And I was like, why is this person behaving this way? And he's like, here, you really need this book. And sorry, my phone's going off like crazy. And I was like, it was a surprise to me. I was young and just getting into like ministry stuff, and you meet people and you do have that assumption that they, especially when you share a church or a school or a neighborhood, or when you have those things that you share something with them, then you assume a lot of other things are the same as well. And I think that can lead to a lot of misunderstanding, or, what they say about assuming, for sure. So I know, like I said, I know I stayed back in the boundaries in your family, and a lot of it was talking about having a lack of boundaries. I thought, I don't even know if I should say the word. This is in a book study. Do not ban this video. But it talks about catching the virus. It says when you don't have good boundaries, our family of origin has the power to affect our new family. And in fact, I'm just gonna have to cave and put my glasses on. I can't read a thing. One sure sign of boundary problems is when your relationship with one person has the power to affect your relationships with others. So they were talking about having some common signs of a lack of boundaries with the family that you grew up in. And then they were talking about like giving someone way too much power in your life, and it affecting your new family, and this would, I think, apply with a young family, or a new family. Let's see, where's the question that I wanted to? How do you respond emotionally to a person who affects your relationships with others? What's the emotional fallout from contact with that person? I don't know. I think I've grown so much since I've read these from the beginning that I really don't have the same kind of problems that I had before. But I think it is important. Like, for me, Carly and Matt just got married, and my son Zachary's married now. And so for me, there's a balance in respecting that new relationship, that new family, and still wanting to engage and pursue. And I've got so much glare on my glasses. And so for me, that's new for me because we're in that new season. And so needing some guidance and feedback. And I think it went back to, I had Paige's voice echoing my ears when I was writing this, and it kept going back to that, having the communication, taking the time to have the communication. And I think I have, that's a anxiety thing for me, is from, past trauma of people leaving and whatever, abandonment, things that, well, I just won't talk about it. But then you're not close together. When, if you would have the conversation and have the communication, then there wouldn't be the assumed distance, that, oh, well, you must want me to leave you alone, so I don't know. I think that's really challenging as families move into new seasons and learn to set new boundaries, as the relationships change. I don't know if you guys have had the same kind of, well, you obviously have, because Paigey is now grown and a big girl.
I have my little family unit with Joshy, as
Yeah.
you guys know. And yeah, I totally agree. I think that the catching the virus, if we don't have good boundaries, a family of origin has the power to affect our new family. And I think that kind of falls in line with just carrying baggage from your family and unresolved communication patterns, emotional patterns, just ways of interacting with your partner. And I think a lot of times, what typically happens is if those issues are unresolved, if you have unresolved family issues, those can kind of just transfer over, and you actually, like, your spouse kind of starts to play a role that you would have seen in childhood from either parent. And so, like, that new spouse can take on, like, we hear like the daddy issues, the mommy issues. And I think that kind of like spawns out of this catching the virus, as this book put it. And that, how your relationship with, like, let's say it's your dad, and if your dad like really triggers you, and you have an interaction with them, and then it ruins your whole day, and then that then affects your family. So if those wounds are still there, and if those triggers are still there, and you don't know how to like emotionally repattern those, I think it's very easy for those to come up in the new family. So how do you and Carly navigate? Or I guess, Carly, have you established boundaries for your own marriage and family? And are those communication patterns between you and your husband different than what you had when you were a child?
They're definitely, they were different at first, but now I feel like it's all like it was a little bit more rounded. A little bit more well-rounded. It's like, when we first started, his family was so much different from my family. And my family is like, I never knew, but my family apparently is like very close and open with talking to each other. And his
good.
isn't as much. And like, it's just different things. Like, they're he like touches and hugs his brother, which I think is like super weird. And then, but also like I have like hour-long conversations with my brother on the phone every other week. You know what I mean? So it's like it was definitely like a little different, but now we have our own. We've definitely had to put up like different boundaries for different sides of the family. It's weird.
in different places.
Yeah.
Amy, what's that been like for you? Because you also, like me, have a blended family. Charlie has kids from a previous marriage, and us getting into a relationship and then blending our families in the most beautiful way. They all get along really well, thankfully, and all that. But it's different when you're like restarting your life and putting those boundaries in place and knowing like, okay, this is my husband, but these are my kids that I'm responsible for, and then also having parents that are getting older, and all of these relationships that we're balancing. How did you guys do that? Do you feel like you still have good communication across all the relationships and generations? And do you have any advice or tricks or helping us with any of that?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of thought that you and I were more the same age, but I didn't realize that I'm not that much younger than you. But as far as relationship with like blended families and stuff, Vix and I really didn't have any good boundaries or discussions as to how my role would be to the boys. And so at the beginning, it was really rocky.
Mhm.
And it still kind of is. I mean, now that Tarn's older, it's a little easier to talk to him, and it's more of along the lines of like a friendship type of thing. I'm never really gonna play a parental role in his life, I don't think. So, but I was always very encouraging between Paige and Bix to form their relationship in the way that they were comfortable with. I don't think I stood too far in the way of that happening. So, and Paige and Bix have a great relationship, very good relationship. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
But as far as like my extended family is, yeah, they're getting older. It's harder to keep them engaged in family events and things like that. But just trying to just stay involved in their life as much as I can, I guess.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah.
that communication and keep
Yeah.
making the invites. That's where I really, struggle with that balance of like pursuing and not. I don't want to be like annoying. I don't
Right.
want to be the like, hey, and I never want to make them feel guilty or, any of that. So I just kind of, the door's always open, but at the same time, I always want to be that, let them know that I'm thinking of them, that I want to see them, that I'm looking forward to seeing them, that I would love to have them here, kind of thing. And with my mom too, especially with my dad gone now, my sister's there living with her, and her kiddos, but she's still, in that transition where, she was a couple for so long, and now she's alone. And I just want her to know that she is a part of a family still, and she's matters, and that we're all thinking of her and stuff. In the book, they talk about different relationship, about how three's a crowd, and people kind of forming that triangle, and how that can be really destructive in relationships. I don't know if it was in the family part or in the friend part.
The family part, yes.
Okay. And they were talking about, and so I grew up with sisters. And I had a little brother, but he's a lot younger, and we mostly just raised him as another sister. But he grew up very manly, but he loves bubble baths and he's a great cook. But he's like, but we had the three of us girls, and it was always like two of us against the other one. I don't know if that's just a girl thing, but it always seemed like that. Like it was like we
You
would
had to
gang
get
up,
on your side.
yeah, and be
The-
validated by somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that a lot of that's a lack of confidence in yourself, maybe that you need somebody else to validate you for you to be right, and then you're right. Um, and then also having that, a friend of my enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. So people bond over stuff like that. Um, and not that sisters don't just bond naturally, but it just, and maybe it happens with everyone. It's just my experiences that I had sisters. And so I'm thinking it's more prevalent in a girl situation. But that's one thing that I would love to see uh, broken, or because sometimes I think that makes people have distance in relationships, in that you feel like, well, I can't really talk to that person because she's really close to this person, and then that's going to be used against me, kind of thing, feeling like that triangle is always there. I lost one of my sisters, but um, and this was when we were kids. I don't feel like this now. Now we're grown up and we're able to communicate in a lot more healthy way. But I think that kind of spilled over to like female adult relationships too. I worry about, um, I would rather someone just be direct with me and come to me directly and say, than to go, oh, well, I'm going to go talk to her, and I'm going to go talk to her, and I'm going to go talk to her instead, all the way around the room, instead of just coming to me and talking to me about it.
Yeah, I definitely experienced this three's a crowd triangulation in my family. Not really with siblings, but with like this step parent relationship. Like I wouldn't necessarily go directly to my stepmom to talk about issues. One was just like not really feeling comfortable, not feeling um, confident in myself to bring these things up, not feeling held when I did bring things up.
Mm.
And then my dad and he was like the confidant, and he felt close when I would share things with him. So then it would just start this like,
Odd man out
yeah, it
kind
was
of
just like this
thing.
talking storm, like essentially, for lack of better terms. But
Yeah.
we would just go back and forth, and like it would just like continuously perpetuate the issue, and I would never actually speak to my stepmom directly. And then I would go back to my mom's house, and then I talk to my mom about it, and like obviously there's going to be a lot of fuel to that fire. And and so it was just this perpetual cycle that I was stuck in. And then I even got into it with my grandma, and like it was just all around like horrible, like learning communication skills that were based in this triangulation is detrimental when you get into adult relationships, and especially like female friendships. And this is definitely something that I am currently working on. And I loved the part about like, if don't say anything to someone else that you wouldn't say to the person that you have an issue with to their face. It's like, it's
Yeah.
fine to confide in people. We obviously, that's what friends are for. And hopefully your friends are pushing you to like, take action and either go talk to the person, or, help you get your mind straight on like what you want to talk to them about. But never saying something behind someone's back that you wouldn't say to their face. I definitely try to stay like, I do that across the board, and it has definitely helped in a lot of relationships. So getting out of this triangulation is a huge one.
I think that's one of the things I had such a problem with in this, and maybe I misunderstood what I was reading, but they kept saying like, go to these other people and get strong with them first, and talk about it with them first, and then go confront the person. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. Like,
So how I interpreted that was, that's kind of like when you go to therapy for the first time and they're like, so who's like a safe person in your life? Usually it's a spouse, like that's who we feel most safe and comfortable with. So I think it's more of like practicing with the people that you feel comfortable with, where it's like if you have an issue with your spouse, bringing it up directly to them and in creating those neural pathways so that your brain feels safe confronting people. And then you take it to the next person that you feel the most comfortable with, which is usually like a dear friend, and then taking it to like friends and family, which is typically where there's a lot of that trauma. And so I think it's just like building up your own confidence and internal knowing that like I can approach people and have an issue with them, and I have the tools necessary to communicate what I need to, and then also resolve this issue in a, respectful way.
Mhm.
Definitely. Well, they had oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know.
That's it.
I was all done.
No, I thought Amy was saying something. I was
No,
making sure I wasn't talking over her.
no, just agreeing with what Paige's interpretation of that meaning was.
Mhm. Yeah, there was a lot of, I also thought they talked a lot about, they also gave a lot of excuses, but maybe they were trying to just show where people were coming from. There was, maybe I wrote it in my book. They were talking about like, well, it's because this person's parents were enabling and, oh, and that was why, and that was like, I thought it was so strange. Where is it?
Where's my allowance one?
It was talking about, oh, when they get to their, so they start in the book, they start saying, hey, let's run through this boundary checklist. What are the symptoms? And then they say, what are the roots? And so when they would get to the, what is the roots? And I was like, does it really matter what the root is? What the root is of their, like in this one situation, there's like the conflict, compliant and the manipulative controller. Kathy says, I'm in a real jam. You're the only one I can depend on to help me out. But Kathy never plans anything ahead, and Sharon always bails her out, and Sharon always says yes. So Kathy's never going to plan anything because she doesn't have to, because Kathy's always going to bail her out. But then Kathy's always going to, or Sharon's always going to feel abused. And anyway, so then they go back and they say, well, it's because Sharon's parents rescued her from every jam, typing her term papers, lending her money when she was well into her 30s. She lived in a very forgiving universe where nice people were always there to help her. She never had to face her own irresponsibility and lack of discipline and planning. And I was like, so what?
So then she needs to learn a lesson. Yeah.
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 Like, and maybe I'm being completely insensitive, but then they were saying like Kathy
The
didn't
point is
like her.
to understand where it's coming from, but I think to also set your boundaries. Understand where their hurt is coming from, but
that it's not intentional to be mean or misuse you, or
I mean, I think
that it's really not even about you. Typically,
no, it's about
that's just the way they believe the world to be and function.
Mm-hmm. And you let them live in their la la world, but you have your boundaries for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think this highlights how when you are a child and you have certain patterns that you learn from your parents, where it's that like learned helplessness of, oh, like, I don't know how to write this paper. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And then your parents end up writing it for you, and how you never actually learn to like structure and like plan out times for things that you need to get done, or, and then you get into your adult life and then you never know how to plan your day. You don't know how to time manage.
Yeah.
You are always asking everyone else for help. And I think this kind of highlights how if your boundaries go unchecked, how they just continuously manifest in your life, in your adult life.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It does definitely like snowball on you, because you're just perpetual, and then you're like, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah, and typically you're going to continuously seek out that dysfunction. And so you're going to have friends where there is a perfect symbiotic dysfunction in how that relationship is existing in the world. And so, I gave this example a couple weeks ago, but like my best friend she has a fear of abandonment, and then I have a fear of rejection. And so I never reach out because I don't want to be rejected and be like, oh, sorry. Even if it's like, I'm busy and I can't hang out today, my brain takes that as a rejection. And she's like, I don't want to be abandoned, so I'm going to continuously reach out. And so we're continuing to be friends, but it's her reaching out, and we are in this symbiotic dysfunction that is actually still a representation of our lives as children. And so I think having friends that are also doing work like this, and when we both realize our patterns and we both can oppose them and poke holes in these faulty assumptions that were made in childhood, you can really start to grow together. And I think that's why this work is just so important. And just really breaking out of those family traumas and those wounds that we just keep perpetuating ourselves.
Yeah, I did really like in the checklist, I guess they're calling it a checklist. It says, what are the symptoms? What are the roots? What is the boundary conflict? So what's happening here? And then the next question on all these, it says, who needs to take ownership? And in this one, it was talking about the aggressor and the compliant. And typically people think, oh, well, that poor compliant person, they're just giving. But it says the compliant is offering their power to the friend on a silver platter, and giving up their power is their way of controlling their friend. And I will tell you, I have been guilty of this in the past because that's how I controlled the monster. I was in a very controlling relationship previously, and I would submit to control the monster. I would be compliant because that's how I stroked the ego and controlled the monster. And then I was safe because, he was so controlling that he would never leave me. So I thought, well, I won't ever be abandoned because he's so controlling. He'll never leave me. And I can just be real compliant and pet the monster. But then I created my own prison because of that. And so it can just be so dangerous. And you have to really look at yourself and say, like, what is my ownership in this? And when you see where you are manipulating, even through something like being compliant, that is still having an expectation. That quote in here where they said, if somebody gives you something and has any expectation, then it was never a gift, it was a loan. I think about that too with that. I really want to have those kind of relationships where it's just a loving heart, and my friendships they have the definition of a friend in here.
They're not as transactional. Like the relationships that we really want to cultivate are less transactional and they're more based in, like, I want to be a good friend, and I'm going to show up, and you could not ever do that for me, and that's okay because I just wanted to do that. That's the type of person I am. And I think those people and those friends are just so special.
Yeah. When you have people come in your life, it says friendship is a non-romantic relationship that is attachment-based rather than function-based. It is, let's exclude relationships based on a common task like work or ministry. Just look at friendships as compromise of people we want to be around just for their own sake. And that's what I think, like, those are the relationships that just feed your soul. Like, whether it's, and it can be family, it can be friends or family, or it can be people that you work with. It can be somebody you have a transactional, but the friendship part of that is where it's just like, it feeds your soul just to be around them, share those things with them. And it's really not, if there was no function, you would still, enjoy that time and sharing those things with them. But then how important that is to have those boundaries. Even in that, they had the example of the two that were so they were too compliant. And so then they got in a situation where they both were like going down a river, and he's like, I thought you wanted to do this. He's like, I thought you wanted to do this. And so when nobody is, setting those boundaries and having good communication, then you end up in these situations where, you're not really loving without guilt and setting people free in that. So I think that was
I always, with the friendship, there was a part in there that was speaking to like there's for like marriage, and there's these certificates, and there are these binding things like family or having children. There's things that bind you to people that are supposedly these like very strong forces. And I always use the example of typically when marriage comes up, I'm like, okay, so I definitely like want to get married. I think it's great between two people, wonderful. But I've always said, like, so why do we need this certificate of paper to say we're married and like we're committed? Like, you don't go do that with your best friend. You don't go down to the courthouse with your best friend and say, okay, we're best friends. Like,
it's official.
Right.
That friendship is kept alive by these mutual interests and genuine love for this person, and wanting to support them and what they're doing, and receiving that support back, and then these things filling up your soul. And in there it said, can you imagine if you just had a contract, and the only reason why you stay friends with someone is because you're like, well, we're contractually obligated to each other. And I don't think anything should be like that in life. And always continuing to stoke those fires of like true love and intimacy with friends and partners and family is just so important.
Definitely. Carly, you were bursting at the seams. Do you want to share?
Oh no, it was really just the part about like, why does it have to be on a piece of paper? It's just for the government, for tax purposes, and it's stupid. They even if you change your name, it doesn't actually legally change your name. My mom's maiden name is still on my birth certificate, even though she had a different last name, and she has another last name. And guess what? It's still the maiden name. It's still the first last name you got when you were born. It doesn't
Slow your roll, girl. You make your mom sound like a runaround. But
No,
do a common law marriage. At least as long as you're living together for 8 years, most states, common law, you are married as long as you're sharing the same address for 8 years or more.
There we go. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. This is a little off topic, but not really. I love this. I absolutely love this. This is Brian Reeves' Life, Relationship, and Insight Ninja. Choose her every day or leave her. And you could, him or her. He said, I spent 5 years hurting a good woman by staying with her, but never fully choosing her. I didn't want to be with this one. I really wanted to choose her. She was unique, exquisite woman, brilliant, funny, sexy, sensual. She could make my whole body laugh with her quick, dark wit, short circuit my brain with her exotic beauty. Waking up every morning with her snuggled in my arms was my happy place. I loved her wildly. Unfortunately, as happens with many young couples, our ignorance of how to do love well quickly created stress and challenges in our relationships. Before long, my once early morning blissful reverie gave way to strained, immature ways of our everyday life together. I'd often wonder if there was another woman out there who was easier to love or who could love me better. As the months passed and that thought reverberated more and more through my head, I chose her less and less. Every day for 5 years, I chose her a little less. I stayed with her. I just stopped choosing her. We both suffered. Choosing her would have meant focusing every day on the gift she was bringing into my life that I could be grateful for. Her laughter, beauty, sensuality, playfulness, companionship, and so much more. Sadly, I often found it nearly impossible to embrace or even see what was so wildly wonderful about her. I was too focused on the anger, insecurities, demands, and other aspects of her strong personality that grated on me. The more I focused on her worst, the more I saw of it, the more I mirrored it back to her by offering my own worst behavior. Naturally, this only magnified the strain in our relationship, which still made me choose her even less. Thus did our nasty death spiral play itself out over 5 years. She fought hard to make me choose her. That's a fool's task. You can't make someone choose you, even when they might love you. To be fair, she didn't fully choose me either. The rage-fueled invective she often hurled at me was evidence of that. I realize now, however, that she was often angry because she didn't feel safe with me. She felt me not choosing her every day. In my words, my actions, she was afraid I would abandon her. Actually, I did abandon her by not choosing her every day for 5 years, by focusing on what bothered me rather than what I adored about her. I deserted her. Like a precious, fragrant flower, I brought proudly into my home, but then failed to water. I left her alone in countless ways to wither in the dry, hot heat of our intimate relationship. I'll never choose another woman I love again. It's torture for everyone. If you're in a relationship, invite yourself to ask this question: why am I choosing my partner today? If you can't find a satisfying answer, dig deeper and find one. It could be as simple as noticing in your deepest heart's truth, I just do. If you can't find it today, ask yourself again tomorrow. We all have disconnected days. But if too many days go by and you just can't connect with why you're choosing your partner and your relationship is rife with stress, let them go. Create the opening for another human to be, for another human being to show up, and see them with fresh eyes and a yearning heart that will enthusiastically choose them every day. Your loved one deserves to be enthusiastically chosen every day, and you do too. Choose wisely. I love that. I think it's like so important where he's saying like, oh, he's seeing himself. I guess he's seeing that self-awareness through that lesson where he starts out complaining about her, oh, she got cold, and complaining about me. But to be honest, I stopped choosing her a long time ago, kind of thing. And that's the point of the self-awareness and the taking responsibility for it, I thought was really powerful. In that who needs to take ownership, and how we all need to take ownership in all of our relationships. And then each day in all our relationships, not just I know we're talking about boundaries in our spouses too. And I want to get into the law of power before we go. And we haven't even gotten into the kids yet.
Yes. I love that. Choose her every day. And I think that's very in line with just being self-aware. How are you showing up in your relationship? What effort are you giving? Is this an equal give and take? Is there one person that's more energetically dominant and like taking more energy but not giving it? And just if that energy is off, like fixing it and then continuously choosing that person and like dating, you should always date your wife.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting that he was saying like, I started looking at the dark things, because the day gets in there, the stress of, hey, did you take the trash out? We have to pay the bills, all that, the things you don't talk about when you're dating, So then when you're married and you're sharing the burdens of life, and then you are having those conversations you weren't having when you're dating, and you have to remember to focus on the good things too, and where you put your attention is what's going to magnify and manifest. And you have to, really remember what you love and share with each other. In the law of power, I just want to touch on real quick before we go on. They talked about this with the friends too, like having the friends where you had an aggressive or controlling friend, or where you would just say like, you can behave this way, but I'm not going to be around if you're going to behave this way. And you either have to leave the room, leave the relationship, leave the space, whatever. So they gave some examples, and they said to contrast the ways of reacting. Let's see, you can't change another person. If they are a complaining spouse, it just keeps the problem going. You just accept them as they are, respecting their choice to be that way, but giving appropriate consequences is the better path. And so before boundaries, this person might say, stop yelling at me. You have to be nicer. And then after boundaries, or a way to say it with boundaries would be, you can continue to yell, but I will not choose to be in your presence if you're going to act that way. Or someone that's having a drinking problem, they give an example, you have to stop drinking. It's running our family. You have to do this. You're wrecking our lives. You have to change. And then after boundaries, they say, you may not choose to deal with your drinking if you want, but I will not expose myself and our children to this chaos. The next time you're drunk, we're going to go to wherever for the night. We're going to tell them why we're there. Your drinking is your choice, but what I put up with is mine. And so I thought that was really powerful, of not being a victim of somebody else's behaviors, and really putting that strong boundary in. If somebody is behaving some way, you don't feel some way because of someone else's behavior. You don't give them your power. And that was a really strong point for me.
Yeah, you're stepping into like your own personal responsibility, and you can only control yourself. Like you can't control anything outside of that. And so if you're just that nagging person, you're probably feeding into some type of emotional cycle from that other person is desiring from you. And when you like, even if you're the person that's like, stop drinking, this is for our family, like, and you think it's in a good way, and like, or that is going to have a good effect, that person's brain is probably loving that. Like deep down, they feel safe in that, even if it's chaotic. They might, that might be a rejection wound for them, where it's like, see, I'm always gonna be rejected, but they're gonna stay in that because that feels safe. And as soon as that other person actually serves a different response and allows the other person's brain to respond differently as well, then you can actually create real change. When it's like, you know what, you do you. I'm not going to be around this anymore. And then the other person is like, oh, I actually have to
That's not working for me. Yeah.
myself. And like, this is no longer feeding into this cycle that actually keeps perpetuating everything that we don't want to happen.
Yeah. I do want to jump into the kids thing real quick. You guys will have to help me on this one, because I didn't get ahead and do the kids. So, but I had several children that I raised, and they're all different. And there was, I tried to parent with consequences, like natural consequences, with the boundaries. And that was easier with some kids and more difficult with others. But it seemed to be the most healthy way to parent, was that, if well, I'm really sad for you that you didn't get your work done, and so now you can't go on this thing. And sometimes it even like causes the whole family to kind of have to, and that's where it's really tough. I was like, well, the whole family was going to go do whatever, and so you have to be careful in setting those boundaries, I think, so that it's something you can follow through when you're setting boundaries with children. Would be my only takeaway, or my only advice on boundaries with kids, I guess.
Yeah, I love the first little excerpt in chapter 8 of the workbook. It says, of all areas in which boundaries are crucial, none is more relevant than that of raising children. How we approach boundaries in child rearing will have enormous impact on the characters of our kids. How they develop values, how well they do in school, what friends they pick, who they marry, and how well they do in a career. That is perfectly summed up of how important parenting is. Every single thing comes back to how you developed and how you understand boundaries, emotional cycles from the ages of 0 to 10. Like those are your developmental years. Like what you learn then, your brain will continuously keep seeking out those exact scenarios for the rest of your life. And so those formative years, I mean, I don't have my own children. So, but moving forward, and when I do, that's like of utmost importance, is, teaching them how to have boundaries, getting them to a point of self-actualization so they don't have these um, wounds of rejection and abandonment and just like life is chaos. I don't know what to do. Um, do you have any tips, Lisa, on like what worked, what didn't work? Sometimes it works with one. What
Yeah.
works with one doesn't work with the other.
I don't know. I think it is really individualized for the kids. And I'm not anywhere near a perfect parent. So I know I screwed up a lot. And one thing I will say, my son, yeah, I think we can all say that, right?
Pretty good.
I can say
Yeah.
something too. I know.
Yeah, and we all will. And I think that's what I'll never forget when I found out I was pregnant and had my son, and I don't know, I'd probably been home a few days or a few weeks and past the real super exhaustion, called my mom and just bawled my eyes out. And I was like, I didn't know you loved me this much. Like, I never knew how much my mom loved me until I had my own children. And then you're just always trying to do the best for them and do better than what you had for you. Not that your parents weren't great and tried their hardest or had any malintent for you, but you're always trying, because you love your kids so much, you want to do the best for them. I had lunch with my oldest the other day, and they're talking about having kids or starting to think about a family. And so he was talking about like how scary it is, this sense of responsibility coming on and all that, and kind of asking like, not for my advice technically, but I'm going to give a little bit anyway. And so I was like, well, I said, I will tell you, like, especially watching, we really struggled with school stuff and what I thought was helping him and pushing what society says is going to make you happy and successful. And I wish I had known about homeschool. I wish I'd have all the parenting experience that I have now when I was raising my first child, which is not realistic. And so I just told him, I said, I really wish I had viewed you more or experienced you more. What would be the right word? Like watched you more, and like saw who you were instead of trying to make you who I thought you were and what would make you happy or successful.
Mhm.
Because I thought I was making him safe and happy and successful by, you have to do the right sports and make the right grades and be in the right club and do the thing. And, before he was even born, I had the whole first year of clothing bought for him and in his closet.
Wow.
I already had his personality picked out, I mean, it's insane what, society does. And so then when Carly came along and her personality was so strong to be so independent, and Zach had put me in my place a little bit.
Yeah.
And I had started learning that as a parent, like really just, I think that's one thing I would love to pass on to parents is, they're not broken.
Mm-mm.
They're beautiful. They're made just how God wants them to be made. They have a path. You get to be their parent for as long as he sees fit. Whatever path, journey, amount of time that is, whether it's, for 7 years in the beginning, whether it's for a few years in the middle of their life and you never see them again, you just don't know what it is because you don't own somebody. And I think that we have an unhealthy view in society of owning and also applying or mirroring our success. Is we put that crap on our kids. Well, my kids have to be this, so then I'm better. So I feel good about myself. That if my child has a success or a failure, that is my child's success or failure.
Mhm.
That is not a reflection of me. My kids are great. I have parented them, and I am parenting still, Cannon, and I'm still parenting Carly, but just as an adult friendship parent role. But we have to like separate that we don't own people, and any success or loss that she has is something that she owns, and I'm happy for her or I'm sad for her, but we really can't like,
It's on them.
I don't know. I just think I just think parents really put an unhealthy amount of, oh, well, my kid, this. And
They-
at the same time, when they fail, I mean, Carly, you saw it a lot where we live.
We grew up in very suburban, like White Witch.
Stepford.
Everyone was White Witch Lululemon person, and
Mhm.
it just sucked sometimes, but it wasn't awful all the time. But you said like you were like that was like a struggle for you to try to not like pick his personality. But I had multiple friends, and I had one come to you like specifically and talk to you about how her like you know who I'm talking about, how her mom does that. And I remember just thinking like, what the heck, like the things that she had to do just because her mom bought her like $100 swimsuit because she wanted her to be wearing $100 swimsuit. Like it's just weird stuff, and like my mom
It's weird.
You never tried to make me do something or wear something, or like you never even bought me stuff. You would take me shopping because you wanted me to pick it out. Like you should.
Well, you guys put me in my place quickly.
I guess so.
But we were also always trying to seek that. I had a craving. I still have a craving for deep relationship with my children, my family, my friends.
Yeah.
Community is so important to me, and so I was always trying to learn and grow. And I think that's why, Carly, when you said earlier that like you apparently our family talks a lot or whatever. Like I had my kids. So Zachary's very physical, Carly's not, or she used to not be. And her love language was gifts. And so I had them sit down. They're probably I don't know if you guys were even out of elementary school, and that did a love language for kids test and made them read about each other's love language so that they would understand. It's because he would get his feelings hurt because he'd go to hug her and she's like, ugh, and she'd make him a present, a picture or something, and he'd tear it up. Well, then that hurt her feelings. So when you're both talking to each other in different languages, you can't hear each other. It doesn't matter that she said, I love you, and gave him a picture. He can't hear it, and vice versa. She can't hear, I love you, because if he goes to hug her, that doesn't feel like I love you to her, So it was just so important to me that we had good communication and that we were trying to grow as a family and be close. And so I don't know. I just think, I don't know, once again, Paige's voice, communication, and all of us, and also just not assuming an intention of the other person. I think giving a lot of forgiveness and freedom, and having that conversation. And I know it can be scary because there's a possibility that you're not going to hear what you want to hear.
Right.
But having those conversations. So that's where I would just challenge everybody to really take that power, get into these boundary studies, understand where your boundaries are to keep your heart and yourself safe. But when you can do that, when you can learn to have healthy boundaries, then you can push in and get close and have those great relationships. So, all right, ladies, I got to run because I have to go to my trauma energy healing therapy session.
Ooh, have fun.
Yes, have the best time. That's some amazing work, and highly recommend for anyone that doesn't know what trauma release is, go look it up and do it yourself in the comfort of your own home. It's a great way to really just shake out energy trauma that's stored energetically in your body, and that you can't really get to with just talking about things.
Oh, well, it's somebody Carly introduced me to, so I can maybe get her to come on or something
Carly?
sometime.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
have the
so
best
excited
time.
for you. Okay.
Thank you so much for today's talk. I hope
Yeah.
everyone has a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Remember to join us in the Telegram group, like this video, share it, and let's all grow together and have a great community. Take care. Thanks, ladies. Bye.
Bye.